So I have some jokes around starting nonprofits. That nonprofits run on two things: passion and money.
Yeah.
And one of the dark truths of being a nonprofit founder is that the way to get the money is to talk about the passion. But then, even as you're talking about the passion, you're thinking, okay, how do I get the money?
Right. Yeah. And if you think about it, a lot of times people in the nonprofit sector will say, we have to beg for money, we have to beg for money. Well, guess what? Entrepreneurs have to beg for money too. It's not just the nonprofit sector where you're begging for money. It's in the nonprofit sector. People have miniaturized ambitions, as Susan Beresford at the Ford Foundation used to say, about how much money they're entitled to. Like the nonprofit sector doesn't distinguish the concept of capital. Nonprofits think of their capital as whatever's in their petty cash. So if they get $23,000 in their petty cash, that's the money they can use to create something new, whether that's a new fundraising endeavor or a new program. Well, that's not how entrepreneurs in the for-profit sector think about it. They think about what scale do I want this idea to enter the marketplace at? How much money would it cost to bring it out at that scale? And let me go to the capital markets and get that much money so I can do it right. Their dreams aren't limited by the amount of money in the bank account. I mean, imagine if Elon Musk, I can't remember whether he bought SpaceX or Tesla first, but let's say he bought Tesla first and he wants to start SpaceX. Well, he doesn't look at the petty cash in Tesla to go start SpaceX, right? He goes to the capital markets to do that. And so this oversight of the concept and power of capital in the nonprofit sector is a big problem. And it's driven by the fact that the sector has been so oppressed. That so many of the freedoms we give to business have been taken away from the nonprofit sector in the name of some kind of an ethic. You want to know why nonprofits haven't changed the world the way we hoped that they would? Because that is not what we asked them to do. We asked them emphatically and consistently, and we still do, keep your overhead and your salaries low. So that's what they did. And if you keep your overhead and your salaries low, we will reward you with donations, regardless of the fact that you may not be having any impact in the world. And impact becomes an entirely secondary thing. We don't consider the nonprofit sector to have the potential to be a lead player in changing the world. We don't think that the nonprofit sector could do that. We think of it as a gesture. We think of it as something nice that people dabble in when they're retired or when they're done with their day, and it's why I challenge anyone to go back and listen to all of the presidential debates of the last 5 decades and see if you hear the nonprofit sector mentioned once as a critical element of how we solve problems for the least among us. And as it's currently constrained, it's not capable of taking on that role. But if we released it from these anachronistic constraints, and what do I mean by that? I mean, well, we don't allow nonprofits to use money to attract the absolute best people to solve problems. We don't allow nonprofits to advertise so that they can excite the general public about the work that they're doing and grow. We don't allow them to take risks when it comes to new fundraising and new ways to grow. We measure them in 12-month increments, so we don't give them any time, and we don't give them a capital market. And the for-profit sector gets all of those things. Well, if you gave all of those things to the nonprofit sector, it could address the issues with the help of business and government, but could take the lead in addressing the issues of poverty that still remain at 14% in the United States, illiteracy that's been at 14% for the last 4 decades, breast cancer, where the mortality has been hovering around 40,000 for the last 4 decades with no change. Suicide, where the mortality now approaches 40,000, up from 10 years ago. All of these problems are problems where the nonprofit sector is uniquely doing on-the-ground R&D that nobody else is doing to figure out what innovations might work at solving those problems, but they don't have the scale. The problems are massive in scale. Massive in scale. These are multi-billion, decamillion, decabillion problems And we want our charities to be small. And when they start to get too big, we think, oh, I'm going to give to this other charity because they're big enough. Well, not if they haven't solved the problem. They're not big enough, right?
Well, the ideal nonprofit puts itself out of business, which, as you're saying, never happens because the nonprofits aren't actually designed to hit a scale where they can solve the problem.
Yeah, and I'm sorry to interrupt, but one of the things that kills me is this notion that people say, well, we need to make our nonprofit sustainable. Nobody wants your nonprofit to be sustainable. They want you to go out of business. I had a client call me 5 years ago, say, we're celebrating our 50th anniversary as a breast cancer organization, 25th anniversary as a breast cancer organization. We want to tell people everything we're going to do in the next 25 years. I mean, do you realize how ironic that is? People don't want breast cancer to be around in another 25 years. They don't want to be celebrating anniversaries. They want these problems to be ended.
Hey YouTube, thanks for watching. Please do hit like and subscribe and hit that bell if you want to be notified every time a new episode drops. Thank you.